everybody, and welcome to another Armies on Parade video. And I'm very excited about this one because this is obviously a brand new army. It's the Sylvaneth. They just came out this year, and it's one of the first times I really had set out and went out and bought a whole army and sort of worked it from beginning to end, which I know sounds ironic because I have many of these videos and I have a lot of armies, but most of them have honestly been cobbled together over many years. And so they tend to be a bit disparate, as you may have noticed if you watched some of my videos. This one only has a tiny little bit of that. So the army is done now, or at least done enough, and so I thought I'd make this video. Let's jump into it and see some, and I'll do the normal thing where I talk about the models and what I like and what I don't like. Alright, so let's start out with the old stuff. I only have 2 slides for old stuff. These are Raging Heroes Treekin. I got these back when I was going to do a Wood Elf army sometime long ago. I picked up a Wood Elf army on the second hand real cheap, and they happened to have some Raging Heroes Treekin. And I didn't have any square bases at that moment, so I honestly just cut little pieces of plastic art and put it on the round base to measure out their square. That's how lazy I was. But they're fun. They've got little tree froes. These are my little tree fro guys. And Mr. Spiky, the leader. They're, not great. Pretty standard dry brushing and washing stuff. But I discovered some things I really liked here when I did these originally. Such as having the tips of the fingers or the bits of wood go into a different color, which is a lesson that I would carry forward. So, they're here. They exist. They'll be Kurnoth Hunters now. And that's fine. They can either be Kurnoth Hunters, or I could, dig up an old scroll or something, depending on what I'm doing. Similarly, this was my Tree Man from my old Wood Elf army, so this was my first Tree Man. His arm is in a bit of a weird position, his sword arm, because I didn't really realize how weird it was to reposition these things at the time, and reading instructions is for losers, so I just started kind of gluing them together, and then I realized that he's going to have a wonky arm. But I like this guy. Overall, he's certainly not great, but there are certainly elements of him that I like. I like the green that I chose here. I think it's pretty nice and bright. The sword doesn't have enough variance in it. That's my big problem. I wasn't sure what to do with it, and so it's kind of flat. There's a little bit of variance, but just not near enough. But overall, I like how the glowing runes came out with the ghostiness. Yeah, that's okay. And I like the overall color scheme. I think that very jade-colored green, I think, works well against the sort of rich, warm brown. And he's got a little owl, and who doesn't love little owls? So he's still on his old base, because I don't rebase things. But there you go. Alright, so that thus endeth the legacy models. Now let's get into the new stuff. So when the Sylvaneth came out, I went out and, as soon as I heard Alarielle is on a giant beetle, I was like, okay, I'm in. I called my game store and I was like, pre-order all this stuff for me. I went out and picked it up, and I just, got to work on the army. So let's get into it. So first up, we have the old school Branchwraith or Witch. I don't remember any of the names of these two because they'd always confuse me. But she's fine cast, but despite that, I think she's okay. What was fun about this model is I kind of discovered this pink flesh skin tone. I was completely accidental, but it actually uses a scale 75 color called Bloodfest Crimson as the sort of base color, and then everything else is just literally mixing in white and black, or actually not black, but a very dark gray to get the rest of the variation, and I actually rather like how it came out. That and the green that I'll see throughout I really do like. Another from the same set, actually, called Despair Green. And so I like how that came together. And it overall, I'm very happy with her. I think she's got a nice little model. She's got lots of little tree parts. I wanted to make it look like she was sort of, a few seconds ago she had been just in this copse of trees and then woke up and was ready to reach out and grab you. Okay. So I suppose here I should talk about how my army is arranged. So my Sylvaneth is split into 3 sub-factions. Namely, it is split into the Daughters of Drycha, the Sons of Durthu, and the Children of Alarielle. And there are 3 color schemes to go along with that. So that the Branchwraith we just saw is part of the Daughters of Drycha. This is all the Daughters of Drycha. So they use the Bloodfest Crimson and the Despair Green as their primary colors. And then they have, highlights up and down. Their bark is also darker, has more gray tones in it, things like that. All of my units I tried to have lots of conversions in. All the Dryads have extra sticks and things. So if you look at these, you can see I used a lot of different arms. There's extra sticks attached to the back. Like, it's not just the Dryad with one single little wood stick coming out of the back. I used lots of different little sticks, would glue multiples on. I used a lot of the different little animals. Like, you can see if you look closely, you see the sprite, you see an owl, you see a little blue bird, couple owls, actually. I wanted them to appear as though there was, animals kind of all over the place. And throughout the army, you'll notice that the flowers that are on their bases and stuff, because I wanted, a very rich nature scene, but you'll notice that the flowers and things on their base are also color-coded to their scheme. So all the flowers and nature that's on their bases with the Daughters of Drycha are all in the magenta, purple, crimson, pink, white spectrum to fit into the overall scheme there. And the grass as well. On the daughters, since they kind of represent this angry nature, you'll see some patches of deader grass or darker grass. The grass itself I used was a more muted, desaturated green. So all this is things that I thought about while I was, making this unit to make sure that everything kind of lined up. But this is, you can see, as I mentioned earlier, the carrying through of like having the ends of the claws and things like that come out into these different colors. And I really like how that looks. It makes the model that could otherwise be a little boring and flat and mostly the same color actually get some good variation in it. And here's a little zoom in of 5 of them so we can see them a little closer. These all have, pretty traditional Dryad faces. Since I did a lot of head swaps, I did have a lot of extra Dryad faces, which let me kind of use the ones I really liked. And most of the ones I really like are the ones with leaves on them, because then that helps you color balance out the crimson. One of my big problems with Dryads is that it's really easy for them to be poorly color balanced, because you can have, you tend to paint their skirt a different color, but then that's the only instance of that color on the model. So I favored like sticks out of their back that had leaves and heads that had leaves, so that way I could help to color balance out that crimson, maintain that triangle. Here's another 5. Again, you can see the same thing. Most of these heads you can see have leaves on them, or the sticks on their backs have leaves, that kind of thing. With the daughters, I saved all of the back sticks that have skeletons and skulls, because, Drycha is very angry, and so that was, they're coming after anybody who would dare encroach in their woods, so hence the humanoid skeletons being the primary thing going on here. Okay, now we have the nicer Daughter of Drycha Branchwraith, or Witch. This is a Bones model. This is like a $2 Bones model. This took a lot of cleanup to get into this place, I'll say that. Like, this did not come peaceably. But it's a very cool model. I've always loved this Dryad. Obviously, it was originally in the metal, and then they redid it in Bones. This is I'm fairly happy with how this came out. We've got a little light touch of OSL with the glowing blue blade. Boy, oh boy. Glowing blue blade. There we go. That's what that word is. So you can see it's kind of casting onto her hair, there onto the side of her chest and down onto the branch. It's an interesting trick about OSL. If you have a bright colored blade, using OSL can be a way to create color balance. And the reason that log is there running parallel to her blade is not only for the compositional element of it creates the V shape of the figure, like it balances her, because she is a fairly, like most of the weight of her model is on the left, so I needed to add something to the right of the base to balance that compositionally. But color-wise, it's also there to balance out the color, because then I can reflect the blue glow down onto the log that's beneath it and create more color balance in the overall piece. So you can use basing elements to balance out otherwise compositionally strange pieces that happen to be like this, where, something like 70% of this model, especially with the leaves added, is on the left side of the base, right? So there you go. Okay, next up we've got our Tree-Revenants, or Spite-Revenants. And these have some fun shifts. I've got the Demonette head I really like there. I like that one. She stands out, I think, really well as a sort of unit champion with her mohawk. This is that skin, again, that I was telling you about that I discovered with that Branchwraith. You can see I'm kind of refining it here. I warmed it up a little. It's a little more rich in pink tones here, which I liked. And these are, again, so here, instead of using the Tree-Revenant heads, which I used for one of them, the standard bearer, which I liked because it's the one with the big horns, I wanted these to look, the Daughters of Drycha, to look a little more like tree-ish rather than mannish, because the face is very clearly male. So I instead opted for the Dryad heads, but then turned the faces into, instead of, like on the Dryads, the face is the same wood as the rest of the model. Here I brought them into the same skin tone that the flesh is. And I think overall I like how it came out. Again, we can see the skulls, you can see a lot of leaves. I love the one with the little fat pink sprite sitting in his branches. So again, I pulled like Dryad bits and stuck them in here too. Even my Tree-Revenants and stuff, just all the extra little sticks and bits. You get so many extra sticks and bits with the Dryad kit. I saw no reason to hold back. You can also see the water effects here. These are some of the ones that I use the water effects on, so you can see the like sort of turquoise water at the edge of a couple of the models. You'll see that a lot more as we go throughout this. I tried to mix in some water effects of differing colors throughout this force. Next up, we've got my Kurnoth Hunters, and the Daughters of Drycha are the group that have the bows. I modeled some with each set of weapons. I didn't end up using the little quiverlings or whatever they're called because I thought they looked stupid. I just didn't think they were necessary for the model. The hunters with the bows works perfectly fine. Like, both of the ones look like they loosed an arrow. They just loosed an arrow. Their fingers in the I just loosed an arrow position. And the other one has his arrow, so I was like, it's fine. They're magical arrows. I don't care. I really, really love these Kurnoth Hunter models. Again, you can see the water effect there in the background. But these models are absolutely great to paint and to work with. Some of my absolute favorite models that GW has released in the past couple years. Truly a pleasure, really, really fun to work with. And then, of course, we've got the Treelord Ancient, who is the caster. That's where the caster sits in the Daughters unit. And so, again, we can see the same color scheme. The conversions here were to add a lot more sticks, again, to the back, like you can see around his head. There's more sticks and antlers than there would normally be. I stuck on some extras. And then in the edge of the staff, I always thought that the explosion of tendrils out of the staff was really weak. It's like 2 or 3 little weak little vines. And I wanted there to be more. So I took a bunch of extra, like I took the strangle root itself, which is normally popping out of the hand, put that in there as well as a bunch of extra just sticks and leaves and stuff like that to kind of really make it look like it was exploding with real vines that were going to tangle somebody up and capture them. So I actually quite like how this tree man came out. I think the pink claws are my personal favorite little element of this model. Then we have Drycha herself. So I didn't like the Drycha that they released. I really found I didn't like Power Armor Drycha. I knew I wanted I love the idea that Drycha's inhabiting this tree, but I wanted to go about it in a different way. So my way was with the Ultra Forged Tree Woman, which I've always loved and I used for a previous conversion as a Bloodthirster. So I wanted to use it here again. And I thought it worked really well with the color scheme. Obviously, I added the little tabard piece to her there that the tree men have, because I thought that would help balance out the pink. I added extra, all the branches and sticks on her back are extra pieces that I added. And then obviously you can see again some of the Dryad sticks and things just brought in there. You get so many sticks and bits with the Dryad. I really mean it. And this is, more of the water effect as she's sort of kneeling by the side of this stream. So I was really, really happy with how she came out. There's some tough elements to this model that like the sort of breasts of like what are they? What material are they? Should they be the same color as her flesh? In the end, there was some tough decisions that I'm not completely positive I made the right choice on, but overall I I do very much like how she came out, and I think she's one of my favorites of the whole army. So, and obviously she's, you know, second only to the other lieutenants in the sub-faction who all report to Alarielle. Alright, so next up, we've got the Sons of Durthu. And, you know, Durthu is the most angry, right? He's the repentant, or the unrepentant firestorm, as it were. And so as Durthu carries the sword, so do all his hunters carry swords. And when I went for him, what I wanted to do was have him be the sort of petrified wood. So all blacks and grays, almost no real brown in this. There is actually a slight undertone to that black of real wood color. Like, I actually started out with a real wood color underneath that, if you can believe it. But then eventually, just through glazes and dry brushes and washes, it sort of gets blacked out, and very little of that comes through, except for a little bit of just a hint of it. And then I wanted a very faded, desaturated blue, this very light color, whited out blue, and then to counter that with the hot fire of the yellow and orange. And then obviously, again, the trees and, you know, the grasses are all dead grasses. The leaf sort of components at the base are all the, you know, autumnal colors. So all in all, these were some of the first Kurnoth Hunters I did, but I still like how they ended up. This army is a little more unified since I worked on it within a couple months as opposed to a couple years. So I'm very happy with how these guys came out, and they sort of set the template for the rest of this particular sub-faction. There's another group of them just so you can kind of see them a little better. And yeah, you can see like the dead trees on their base and stuff like that. I like using the little creatures, again, like just the little, I don't know what they are. You know, all the elf and Sylvaneth kits come with fun little weird sprites and animal creatures, snakes and such. Okay, so here we have my Dryads and or Tree-Revenants. And so the idea was when I did my Dryads for these factions, I wanted them to often be in groups of 5, where I could split them up and use them either as 5 and 5 Tree-Revenants or as 10 Dryads. So I modeled a lot of their arms with swords. You can see, like, you'll see a whole group, they're using the blades from the Dark Riders, Dark Elf kit, I think it's not Dark Riders, what is it? The Brolocks, whatever those are called. I don't even know their real name anymore. Brolocks. They have those kind of backward curvy blades. So that's, a lot of these guys have that. And they have more humanish parts. I used the Wild Rider helms for a group here because I really liked how that looked. I thought those looked really cool as alternative, either Tree-Revenants or just Dryads. And you can see, again, extra sticks and just things like that mixed in. Let's take a look at some of the individual groups because I think I have them split up here. Yeah, here you go. So this is the group that's all the Wild Rider helms. You can see they all have the blades, you know, the Brolock blades and stuff like that for the most part. We got one little hiding in there that doesn't, but I like how these came out. I like the antlers that are on their helms. I think the yellow and orange is a fun way to do a sort of almost non-metallic metal gold, but not really. I wanted it to be more of a warm sort of fall color pattern rather than actually shooting for a true non-metallic metal. Because I didn't want any actual metal in these guys. That's one thing. There is no metallic paint anywhere in this army. That was very important to me. Because this is the army of nature, and metal is the enemy of nature, even though it doesn't make any sense. Metal naturally occurs. But, you know, it's all organic stuff. Perhaps that's the better way to say it. Everything in this army needs to feel organic. So, no metal paints whatsoever. This is the other group. So, you can see here we've got the actual Brolock heads with some of their hair. And then, again, they've got their blades. And we've got a couple of Dryad heads mixed into, things like that. But the idea was to make it so they felt cohesive as a unit. Like, either all 10 could fit together, or I could split them into groups of 5, and I would know who was who. Okay, now we come to the Spirit of Durthu. This was also a competition entry for Tyler Mengel's, one of his annual painting competitions, and this ended up getting fan favorite, which I was very happy for and thankful for. So thanks again, Tyler. Super awesome. Check out Mengel Minis if you don't already check out that site. Tyler runs a great site there with lots of good advice and things like that. But this was really fun. I love this tree man. I love the Spirit of Durthu as a Durthu and the Spirit of Durthu as a model. I never use the broken face. I don't find the honeycomb broken face looks nice. I think it's a horrifyingly ugly face. So I always give my Spirits of Durthu normal tree man faces. But nonetheless, I think you still very much get what he is. What I love about this guy is how much the runes stand out, because you've got the black and gray bark, but then with the yellow fire of the runes traced in it. So I like how much that pops. And I think everything about this model, I'm still very, very happy with. This sword, if you compare this to the earlier Spirit of Durthu, this sword has a lot more fun variation in it. I think it pops a lot better. And I think you kind of get the sense of its magic a lot more cleanly. Okay, so now we get to the Children of Alarielle. So first up is my little unit champion slash Branchwraith for this group. Again, this has the a Daemonette head, which I thought worked really well, and then again we've got the Brolock arm. So the color scheme for the Children of Alarielle, I wanted to be very alive and magical. I wanted it to communicate life and magic. So I used this very particular shades of green. These are 3 greens out of the Unnatural Flesh set from Scale 75 in the fantasy range. And I love how these 3 colors come together. I just think they pop so well. And then the blues are just a bunch of different blues, also from Scale 75. But I really like her, up jumping off the rock. I think she's very fun, and I can use her as a branch witch or wraith or whatever else they're called now, and also as a fun unit champion for this unit. So you can see she's in the back there, very high up in the air. So again, I wanted all of these to have very different heads. So you can see we've got a lot of Daemonette heads, but we also have some Witch Elf heads in there. The idea being just to make it so they all had hair, all appeared more feminine, more alive than just the normal dryads. Because they're the Children of Alarielle, I wanted them to feel like very living creatures, like some of the most alive of the dryads. So bringing in some more human organic elements was, I thought, an important part of this. I also, as you can see, a lot of the blue water, a lot of the fun sort of, I wanted the magical water feeling, right? I guess there is probably areas in the Caribbean that look like this, but for the most part, you don't see water this still in this beautifully crystal clear blue, but whatever, it's Alarielle's realm. She's purified everything into perfection, so why not? Here you can see a close-up of the 5 here that are one of the individual groups, and then the other part of that individual group. So, happy with how they came out. Okay, so next up we've got the Tree-Revenants. These are the more stock standard Tree-Revenants from the whole group. You'll notice I didn't have any Tree-Revenants in the Sons of Durthu faction. That's my smallest faction. This one's a little bigger. So we've got our Tree-Revenants here. These are all pretty more close to the actual box. Again, there's extra sticks and stuff, but for the most part, these are the actual kit. I always like to do one more closer to the sort of stock and one a little farther away. You can see the tones here, like the wood tones for the Children of Alarielle are much richer. They have more orange, more ruddy tones in them. I wanted them, again, to feel more like new, fresh, alive wood. So there's a lot more rich of those sort of orange warmth in there. Okay. All right, the Kurnoth Hunters from Alarielle have the Reapers, the Scythes, because I really just loved the idea of these guys going forth and reaping for their queen. Again, we've got a little bit of the water on all the bases. I love how these guys came out. I think this is probably my favorite of the 3 groups of Kurnoth Hunters, because I like how the green works with the brown, and I love the blue scythes. Those scythes are really fun to do, to paint. They are really, really great weapons. I'm thinking about, customizing up another unit of Shabti that are using those scythes just because I think they're that cool. I'd probably just knock that little leaf out of the middle of the oval and, you know, call it a day, basically. And I think they'd be awesome shop T weapons. So, yeah, these guys came out really well, and I'm, again, pretty happy with them. I think they look nice and warm, while still being horrible killers. So that's fun. Okay, the Tree Man. So this is my all-purpose Tree Lord. He can be a regular Tree Lord. He can be an Ancient. He can be a Spirit of Durthu. I kind of wanted him to be able to stand in for any of them, so hence the weird Spear Staff. I thought that would, you know, fit as kind of anything I wanted it to be. But the narrative in my head of why it is like it, why he has the Spear Staff, is because Alarielle had the broken staff of Orion, right? And so she gifted his original staff and spear staff, whatever, to the Spear of Kurnoth or whatever it was called, to this particular Tree Man, her most trusted lieutenant. And I wanted this guy to be in motion, so he's very much repositioned. I learned some lessons from the previous Tree Man positioning. So you can see I turned the base, like he's not standing sideways, he's actually running forward, and his leg is like, his back leg is up in the air as he's kind of kicking out and really like in forward motion. I wanted everything about this guy to communicate like forward momentum, right? I kind of pictured him as though he's like running with the Olympic torch, you know? Like he's really running to go like da na 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 na, that kind of thing. That's what was in my head. So I really like, again, how this guy came out. I like a lot of this army. I feel like I'm saying that too much. Normally I'm very derisive of my own figures, and certainly there's a lot of flaws with this model. But for the most part, I'm still quite happy with how it turned out. This was also more fun experimentation with basing, you know, the different height rocks with the river running through the middle, things like that. I played around a lot with rocks and pastes and nature scenes throughout this army, just in an attempt to see how I could mold the different scenes of nature and what looked realistic and what different, using different kinds of flock and grasses and tufts and stuff like that to try to get to something that actually felt natural. Okay. And the children of Alarielle, of course, report up to the big girl herself, to Alarielle. And I've got multiple photos of her. I'll be completely honest, I am deeply in love with this model. I absolutely love how she came out. This was a fun experiment. Just sort of something that I normally work. People talk about me painting a lot of models, and part of that is because I have this sort of constant drive in my head to get to done. Like, my goal is to finish the model. Get it done. Go. Do it. Finish it. Get to the next one. And that can work against me because sometimes I don't luxuriate the amount of time on really beautiful models that should be done. And the reality is you get to paint a model like Alarielle, you know, once a year, once every couple years, something this big, this magnificent, this unique. And so I really was bound and determined not to rush her. And so this took about 7 days beginning to end. It's probably like somewhere in the magnitude of 70 to 90 hours of work in that time. So if that sounds short, keep in mind how many hours are actually packed in there. And there was a lot of pre-research that was done, thinking about color scheme and sketching out how it was all going to work and thinking about the base and positioning everything. And so, all in all, I wanted to show her standing on like a rock face. Like, in my head, when I concepted this composition, I thought, I want her up on this base, on like a pride rock, like calling forth her beetle from its den, right? I really don't like her standing on top of the beetle. I'm normally a super fan of surfing, but what I don't like about it is she's up on these weird sticks that just like, why are those there on the model? I'm guessing because she did it so she would have her little saddle to stand on, but I just didn't like it. So I jettisoned that. None of the sticks are on here. None of the weird swords that are attached to the Sidle Beetle are on here. I don't like any of those. I like her having her sword on her back, and that's good enough. So this model was like very, very careful. Every single little element I really thought about deeply about the color scheme. And everything was attended to very individually, especially on her. She herself is probably like 40 to 50 hours of work. just because she is a gorgeous model. Like, the detail on her is just fantastic. She is such a crazy good model to paint. So, and then I spent a lot of time looking at other Alarielles that people had done. Spent a lot of time looking at, pictures of real beetles. And this is a real beetle color scheme, by the way. This does exist. There's a fun beetle who when he reflects light, he sort of becomes like a rainbow of opalescence. And it reflects in this green, red, yellow spectrum. It was a really, really cool beetle I found, and I was like, okay, I'm in. So I thought, there you go. I want to do her all in this bright rainbow, this explosion of life, right? That as Alarielle returns to the world, life, just boom. I wanted it to slap you in the face, okay? And so that was really the goal here. Overall, I love how she came out. I cut her wings and repositioned them. I didn't like the position of the wings. I wanted them to be more up and like really framing the model as though she was, lifting her wings way out, as though she was in sort of mid-lift. So I kind of raised them up some off of their normal angle. And obviously I got rid of her weird talon tree hand. I really didn't like that. I replaced it with like one of the elf dragon mage, I think, or something, pieces, that staff. I thought, that she has an attack called the Talon of the Dwindling, which is what that hand is, but okay, that magic item is called the Talon of Dwindling. Yay, there, I solved the problem. And it just felt much better to me. It also helped me balance out the color more of like the bright blue spear versus the blue sort of around the edge of her staff. Again, no metallics. That is maintained. It was tempting. You can see where on her, I see a lot of people use metallics on her, and that's fine. I don't have a great issue with it, but my goal here was no metallics in this army. There are 0 metal paints used in this army, and that's maintained even through her. Everything here is NMM because I wanted it all to feel organic. There's just a more side angle of the beetle. You can see down in this hidey hole a little bit that's all muddy and mossy down in there. The tree was fun to make. Boy, that took time. I've never made a tree from scratch, but overall I'm pretty happy with how that tree came out. The actual leaves and moss and stuff were the toughest part. I went back and forth on that just so many times. There we can see the beetle a little closer. You can see the purple tones and stuff. He does have all the colors of the rainbow in him. He is a beautiful little rainbow. Because I wanted the whole spectrum of life. And obviously the flock and base all around this thing is just so many different kits and basing kits of different flowers from different companies and stuff like that. Like somebody asked me what was it from, so it's Army Painter, Mini Nature, Green Line, Warlord, and then a bunch of stuff from Michaels and maybe 1 or 2 other things I'm forgetting there, but there you go. There's just a little close up of Alarielle. You can see her. I really like how she came out. I think all in all, she is in this bright white dress because the beetle himself is so bright in this bright rainbow color. I needed her to be in a white dress so that way she would be the element that really stood out, right? Because otherwise she could get lost. So this is the final image. We focus in on Alarielle as she calls her Sylvaneth to war. There you go. That is my army on parade for Sylvaneth. This was a really fun project from beginning to end. Obviously, it took maybe 4 months-ish. But there was a lot of other projects worked on there. But I'm very happy with it. Proud of the army, and I feel good. And I hope to get in more games with them than I have already. I've only gotten to put them on the table 1 time, sadly. But that's all right. I'm sure there'll be many, much more times where I get to play them. So thank you very much, everybody, for watching. I hope you enjoyed reviewing the army and my thoughts on it. And I hope some of my thoughts on how I compose my army are helpful to you in composing your own forces. If you like it, give it a like. Of course, subscribe if you want to. Share this video out. That's always the nicest thing you can do. And as always, we'll see you next time. Oh, I lied. See, there is another picture. All right, there's the back of her. And that's probably the last picture. Too many pictures of Alarielle. Thanks, everybody.